It is my pleasure and honor to present to you my esteemed friend, Professor Avishay Braverman.
Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you, Avi.
I don't need this, Colton, no. Thank you. Thank you, Ernie. I'm very excited being here. It's my first time ever at Georgia Tech. I feel humbled and honored. I love Ernie. And I'm going to share with you my thoughts because I believe you are the future. There's not much I can teach you. I can only share with you some of my thoughts and some of my experiences. It's a conversation, it's not a lecture. But first I said, to Ernie before, life is only about people. And people that are committed to something bigger than themselves and committed to each other. And when I look at my life, and I'll define in a second what is the meaning of success in this troubled world, I remember the rhyme from the great Irish poet Yeats that say where man's glory begins and ends, and my glory was that I had such friends. Thank you, Ernie. Provost Raphael Brass, Dean Mariam Alavi, that I have the privilege and the pleasure to get to know you now. I have a young man that was with me in 1965 when I finished high school and enrolled in the army, and this is your Dean of Computer Science, Zvi Galil. He's still in good shape, so he's gray a little bit. I have the Consul General that was in my time in Washington and was the World Bank. She was there, Judith Shore. And of course, most importantly, all the guests, my friend J. Jacob, but students, because you are the future. And I want to start, I'll go in these 45 minutes through stories and tell and thoughts. I want to discuss the issue that are facing you when you enter the business, the social, the academic world, in a world that is very much troubled. How do you make a career while serving humanity? How you apply economics and justice in a troubled world. But I'll start with success. What is the meaning and what is the reason for somebody to be successful? Robert Lucas, Nobel laureate in economics, once said that the two most important variables to explain human being success is the date of birth and the location of birth. You add to that your parents, your connection, it's about 90-95%. 5% though is your natural gift, your determination, your perseverance. When you fall, get up. When you fail, try it again. You don't give up. And then when God, history, luck, knocks on your door, embrace it. But remember when you are successful, like this close friend of mine, Ernie, that it's not yours. 95% it's not yours. You have to return it back. And you lead by example. Today, the world is changing, and Colton just said that in the beginning, with a speed that we never experienced. It's moving so fast, so I don't know how it is to be a professor today in university when everything is changing so fast. What you teach, technological-wise, it's almost irrelevant. We're riding a horse that is blowing us up in technology, and we're arriving very fast at a tipping point in humanity. Because with this riding technology, with changing demography, on one level, we can see horrors. We can see ISIS. We know, and many people are already telling us, that soon enough, what the work that Tzvi Galil and others doing also here, artificial intelligence and robots may run the world very soon. And all of a sudden, we can have hundreds of millions, billions of people unemployed. It's not only what we already have about wages and unemployment. What do we do with that? It's scary. And indeed, when you talk about the issue of the environment, many of the issues that if we ride the horse without changing spiritually, consciously, this can be a very dangerous place for the earth and for humanity. But there is also an opportunity. And the opportunity is you. Because Ernie Scheller, Avishay Braverman, Marian Alavi can support you. But you will come to this exciting, confusing, scary world. You have to ride the horses there, and at the same time, you have to build a new world. Because if you look in a very simple way, and I asked Dina Lavi how many study economics, but I'll be very simple in my descriptions. We know today that a global economic man has been created. We see it, it's all global economics. We know that people speak in one language. Some of you that know the Bible, you remember the Tower of Babel, where everybody starts speaking in one language and try to approach God. We already speaking in one language. www is one language. And some of that think already that we are narcissists to approach God. But like what happened before, we are broken down that while in quantum physics, in Georgia Tech, everybody tells you that we all one, that we all molecules or imps or whatever, every little group have conflict with another group, not realizing that we are one. So if indeed we'll just ride the technology horse, at the same time we won't ride, quote unquote, the spiritual world, not only in words, but also in deeds, the world can go to a very bad place. And it's your responsibility not to give up. And I'll share with you some of the examples that I see in the world that people are doing that without giving the solution, because who knows the solution? And my own experience for my 69 years of life, what works for me and what didn't work for me. I want first to describe why I believe that most of the opportunities today will come from business, from big corporations, and from the individual, also from the small one. Because the world is global, but the global institutions are almost irrelevant. I was 14 years in the World Bank. The World Bank, the IMF, the World Trade Organization were created after Second World War by the greatest economist of the 20th at the time century, John Maynard Keynes, shoulder above everybody else. By the way, he was 2 meters, 1 centimeter, so he was also a very tall man, John Maynard Keynes, you know. That together with Mr. White established in a discussion in New Hampshire in Bretton Woods, these 3 international institutions that guiding us. It was a different world. There was a fixed exchange rate, every country was separate, and there was a need to create institutions that will create global relationship. These institutions, together with the UN and Brussels, are of the past. They are too heavy, too bureaucratic, and everybody that knows them knows that they don't deliver what is needed. So Is politics the answer? I was there, 9 years. And you know what is learning? Learning is only learning by doing and learning by making mistakes. Only when you are inside the system, because now you are learning in theory, you really understand that. My conclusion today, that the likelihood that the big answers for the global issues that come around us won't come from politicians. Why? You know, in the past, I remember in the 80s, when I was in the World Bank during the Reagan years, and I was to go to the Congress and the Senate, and I won't mention names, I promise you, I mean this famous senator from Republican, from Democrat. There was election. The election was over in 4 years, and then it was America. They sit together and they work together how to create America. Politics today, with the internet and the new media, is essentially creating a constant election. Every day is election, and how you get famous in election, because you have to have exposure, by quarreling with everybody every day, rather than meditating and knows what to be a good leader is somebody that look at people, listen to people, and create a team with mutual trust and respect. This is oxymoron today for what modern politics is. And the problem is also in the media. When I came to Stanford in the 70s to get my PhD in economics, there was a public place on TV where civil argument of people from right and left and center were conducted. There was a guy, the guy that some of you know, Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite, when you being the anchorman and the discussion, it was civil, everybody discussed that. But then competition of the media and the internet destroyed the public debate. Why? Because everybody has his own network, his own channel, and the same people only speak to themselves, and therefore they don't debate with each other, and therefore the likelihood today, overall the world, including every place, that the message to handling the global solution that are emerging so fast, with people that will meditate and look for the long term, will neither come from the global institution that exists today, neither from the political institution that in almost every place they seem slightly bankrupt. So where is the new power today that may think and may work for the long term? It can come from two sources, the big corporation and you. I'll start with the big corporations. What is the dilemma today of economics? And since many of you, I asked Dean Alavi that you're not well versed in economics, I want to start with something very simple. Why economics is only cultural persuasion that is overrated and you need humility. And for that, I'll salute the greatest mentor that I have. For me, the greatest Nobel laureate in economics that existed. For me, was greater than Milton Friedman and Paul Samuelson. He died a month ago. I was about on the way to visit him. I'm on my way to Berkeley and Stanford. Professor Kenneth Arrow. Kenneth Arrow, in the 90s, while I was president of Ben-Gurion, I invited him to give a talk to the faculty, why economists should be humble. And I'll repeat the thing that I myself, that spent all my life in economics, sometimes cannot stand the abuse of economics, not only on TV, but at times also even in academia. Economics, how many people study economics here? Because the engineering or other things? Anybody? So I speak to you. Economics is a dynamic subject. Some of you are engineers. It's stochastics, it involves uncertainty. I should confess to you, it involves many agents, but when you do theorems and you extend the number of agents from 3 to 4, most theorems don't go through. There are institutions, and then 2 psychologists should have got the Nobel Prize. One got it, one not. 2 Israelis, Amos Tversky that died, Danny Kahneman that received it, and they did empirical work in order to assess how human beings behave. And the postulate that people do in economics about economic rational behavior is totally different the way people behave. So you have a subject that the fundamentals are problems, that is dynamic, that is very difficult. So the most important, to be humble. Humility is not what you see often in what takes place. And it reminded me a little bit, while I was at Stanford, and I mentioned another business school, Mr. Scheller, you allow me to mention Stanford Business School as well. So so there was this a professor there that he died years ago and used to start his lectures. It was about forecasting. He used to say economic forecasting makes astrology looks good, and then continue to forecast. Because most forecasts, you say what happened yesterday will happen tomorrow, plus epsilon minus delta. It doesn't, and who cares if you are right or wrong? So in a way, economics needs certain humility because it's culture of persuasion, but it really determines now how we see the world. And here I'll take you for a very short tour because Dina Harari is taking my time because I want to tell more stories. Short history, what is the dilemma today that you and us and all facing young people, seeing what happened with modern capitalism? Because if some of you study history, there were 31 terrible years between 1914 and 1945. There was 2 world wars, major economic crisis that led to all of that. And then after 45, in the West, there was a creation of a new era. When Ernie Scheller grew up, when I, a couple of years later, grew up, life was very simple. There was a baby boom. We knew we'll be richer than our parents. If we work hard, we'll get a job with security. And this growth that take place, America was so impressive, also in my country and others, was giving its benefit not only to selected few, but for the many. In the 1980s, the growth will start stopping, being distributed more evenly, and people for a while didn't notice it. But there was 2 major things that happened in the 80s. One was the financial liberalization that got everybody to run to Wall Street. When I studied economics 2,000 years ago, and I taught a little bit, you know how the exchange rate in all the books was determined? Exchange rate. It was function of the demand for goods and services. In Israel, we say, we export Jaffa oranges. From that, we import American Ford cars. That will determine the exchange rate, and the capital account was irrelevant, was residual variables. Today, the total real trade is a couple of $100 billion. In one day, you push the financial buttons, it's trillions of dollars. There was an Hungarian to be American investor, George Soros, that in 1992, in one day, he killed the British pound, made $1 billion, they stopped the market at this time, and he all the time said, you say the market are efficient, are working, look at me, I can do that. You can have a tsunami on small countries. So all these issues of the economy scale of the financial markets, and then the internet coming and having such economies of scale created massive power to certain institutions, get a very skewed distribution. And if you look at the problem of many of the people that were hardworking, and you do that in a very simplistic manner, there was agriculture revolution. The hunter, the gatherer, become farmer. And then the farmer, there was the industrial revolution. Many of the workers become hardworking, some of them lowly paid in factories. And then came the knowledge revolution, and some of them moved to services. But like my friend Yuval Noah Harari, the young Israeli historian philosopher from Tel Aviv University says, but now that the robots are coming, where are we going to go? Right now, there is a major project in Cambridge, a lot of money, to analyze how we're going to deal in a world that artificial intelligence and robots are running us. And it's going to be, maybe, when you still just a couple of years out of the Scheller School. It's happening. So you cannot just avoid that. So I put all these questions, but I told you that I'm putting a finger towards the big corporations. Because what is the dilemma when some of you go and some of you lead major corporations? There are two ways to conduct business. One is family business, and one is to be traded in the market. When you have a family business, and I had once a friend like that, Heinz Deichmann in Ben-Gurion University, that started with one shoe store, became the largest shoeman in the world. He died 2 years ago. But he conducted it with his value. He was a religious Christian. He worked in India. He worked in Africa. He worked at Ben-Gurion. He treated his workers because his values determine how he behaved, while he didn't have to satisfy the valuation of the quarterly accounts of the market. So when you have a family business with ethical people at the top, because it comes to the people, you don't have to suffer from the whim of satisfying the people that are shareholders that looking only for the quarterly account evaluation. Because we know and we teach you every day you grow up, think long. Because you have to take care of the future, of your children. You cannot just live by the everyday. And in that regard, there is a movement now starting all over in the big corporations that are the most powerful elements in the world today, because they are multinationals, they work everywhere, how to shift the emphasis from evaluation of performance according to the stock value of the quarterly account to what was really the intent of benevolent capitalism, to work towards the long term for the value of the workers, the suppliers, the long-term investors, and not only to worship the short term and the shortest and the longest. In that regard, I should mention is my friend that came here, J. Jacob. Since I left politics, got involved in certain things in life. I share with my good friend Ernie and Dina Lavi that I have the privilege today to choose. When you're younger, it's more difficult because you have to do, so when you're older, you can choose who you play with. And I am in a group that, for example, that started with thinking in the Mars Corporation. Mars is a $40 billion corporation. It was created by a man called Forrest Mars, but when he created it in 1947, he declared that the objective function of this company is to serve the workers, the suppliers, etc., and the shareholders. And they're maintaining that, but due to two people that work there, Bruno Roche, that later was joined by this guy, J. Jacob, they start doing studies now to affect the discussion in the corporation and beyond, to demonstrate that people can make profit, which will know that, while taking care of the natural capital, social capital, human capital, but they did something else, they measure it. They work in case studies in Kenya, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, and they do measurement. But in the corporate world, you have to measure. And their book is going to come soon, and Completing Capitalism, Healing the Corporation to Heal the World, is one example, but it's not only mass of group of people that live in the corporate world, in the family firm, it's easier. But it's also happening now, and I won't mention name, in corporations that are traded. And I remember when I sat with some people in the board of some of the very large corporation, the group that runs it above, the guy told me, what we are selling now, for me, the most important thing, that we work for the long term and for values. And I'm willing to sacrifice everything else in between. And I determine the game. We are the people determine the game, not the whims of the market. And that's not simple for most corporations. So this movement that have to buy in business school, etc., to work for the long term, because you know well that if we only maximize the value of quarterly account, with most likelihood, we destroy this earth in no time. Today, contrary to the past, there is a consensus among scientists that there is can be 10% probability that if we continue the way we move with the CO2 and everything else, in 30, 40 years, we may have event of such major calamity that will be major disorder around us. If I was telling Dina Harari that she has, let's say, $10 billion, and in 30, 40 years she may lose it all, she probably will buy insurance. But do we buy insurance? Do we do anything, if that's probability? Because we have to think long term, both for the environment and for the workers, and that was the idea when Martin Luther, the reformist, essentially, you remember, some of you that have background in religion, that in the beginning the Catholic believed that the poor will inherit they will go to heaven, and the rich will go to hell. And then come Martin Luther, the reformer, and say, no, rich people can go to heaven. But they have to work hard, they have to save, they have to have modestly, and create wealth for future generation. Because you are Jew, I won't mention the fact that you are a good Christian, okay? Now, this battle is taking place today, and some of you may join it, the way these people are doing. And it's battle that have to be in business schools, in other places. There is an excellent book by one of our partners. He is the top economist at the Said Business School in Oxford, called Firm Commitment, about the history of the corporation, because some of this engagement have to be done by you, because you will be master of the universe. And you can't let just the system run by itself, because you'll be players, and you can shape that as well. That's the big corporation. But the other power is the individuals. Individuals today have power to create light nets around them, and they have to act about. And since I'm talking only on experiences right now that I am engaged with, and later I'll share you some stories from my life, there is another young man that came to my life now that for me is example exactly what can come out of the Scheller Business School. The guy name is 41 years old. He's an Israeli. His name is Aviv Cohen. He's a mathematician. That some of you good in mathematics. He studied in London, create some startups, sold them, work in China. And now he created a company called Kainat, Kaennaat, where he created an investment fund where he's building right now, I just talked to him today, he's in Rwanda, 250,000 solar houses with panels, $6 a piece. And he's honest, and he's moral, and he was a group of young people all over that they are connected, and say we're gonna only do business only if we are doing it right, and we serve everything, and you can make money while you're doing that. And contrary to the big corporation, it's easier when you are lean but not mean group of people to penetrate. And the world today need this type of activities where people go to a certain place and then the World Bank and then the other can come because it's so heavy. I call that this is the type of people that you come out of business school, create things, entrepreneurs, and they do it both in the moral way, they will make money while making other people better off. I want to share with you what I learned for my 69 years about the luck and success. And I'll start to say, like Ernie Scheller talked to me when we've been before, I'm a very lucky man. My parents came in 38 and 36 from East Europe, rest of our family mostly was eliminated, murdered in the Holocaust. My father was a carpenter, my mother and kindergarten teachers, both of them very cultured people. And I got the backing for my parents, who've been in a poor neighborhood, to move forward. When I said that really so much determines on the neighborhood and everything that you are, for me, I got this realization so clear in 1980. In 1980, I was leading a major research and reform project in 3 areas in India. 1980. How much is it? It's quite a few years ago. Was pure poverty. And I was working in villages of the Harijans, the untouchables. Poverty beyond belief. And then it dawns on me, without shanti, without ecstasy, without taking nothing, that if I was born there, the likelihood that I'll achieve what to achieve will be dismal. Because we are so lucky, many of us, because of where we've been born, who we've been around, that give us the chance. And in my life, I had a journey that I never planned. I wanted, since I was a kid, to make the world a better place. But really, I wanted to be a basketball player. I was the captain of the basketball player of my high school. I was playing forward and sometimes center. I'm 6'2". Today, I'm not even a small guard. I gave it very soon after that. I realized nothing came out of me. And I went through my journey. In my journey in economics, I essentially studied. I was lieutenant in the army. I didn't know what to do. And then came a guy. It's always about people. Remember, you meet people, you never know how it happens. You meet somebody, something happens, listen, be open. This guy that I'll see next week at Stanford was an Israeli professor from Stanford. Say, Avishay, why don't you come get a PhD at Stanford? I said, why I go to Stanford? I never was on an airplane until I was 24 and a half. Why are you at Stanford? I said, go. I went to Stanford. The world opened to me. It was wild time at the time. It was very interesting. And I really worked with 2 people that get the Nobel laureate later, Joe Stiglitz and Mike Spence. They became my friend. And I was about to go to teach at Tel Aviv University when I'm 28. But deep down I knew, like each of you have to look, what is your passion? You know, in Zen they say the heart is a great master, but a poor servant. The mind is a great servant, but a poor master. I knew just to be a professor, it doesn't fit me. I really like to move. So, in 1976, the 2 most powerful institutions on earth economically was the World Bank and the IMF. Private capital movement were dismal. India and China were backward country, and I arrived in Washington. And I have, from a guy that dreamed to see the world, I work in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, I saw the world. I learned what works and what doesn't work. If I will come again after this talk, you allow me again, and probably this time I should talk also in economic and business school advance, I can share with you how I learned the faults of the banking system. And I'll just share with you one thing that is very, very simple. You know, I was there, coming as a young economist, bright from Stanford, and I start seeing people pushing money from the north, the developed world, to the south, developed. You know, it makes sense because we say there is capital in the north, there is labor in the south. You push capital to labor until you equate the rate of return, and you live happily ever after. Except like in the fairy tale, it's not the case. There is absorptive capacity, there's corruption, and I saw that happen one time after the other. And then very soon I realized there was no accountability in big banking, and still not today. Why? Because if Ernie Scheller had a company on his own, and he behaved like that as he's pushing things, he will get bankrupt. But what happened in Washington already at these times, that say there are 3, 4 big banks. I won't mention any names, don't worry, because they record me, so I don't want to get any trouble today. And if one bank was behaving, but the 3, 4 banks look to the left, look to the right, the four of them pushing the money. And then I learn on my body. It's not only the characteristic too big to fail, because if you fall, you carry the system with you, that in big banks, it was not absolute performance that count, it was the relative performance. And when Bank A look to the right and see that Bank B to the left does the same, they come, the four of them together, and then they go to Uncle Sam or Aunt IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and say the world is falling apart, you have to take care of it. No crime and punishment, and it never changes much. Because there's something that you learn in system, that there are systemic problems that we don't really analyze. I don't see all the time, I see 30. Huh? You should tell me what left. Okay, thank you, so I have to shift. All the time I think I have 30, I said, it makes sense. So there is dilemmas, but I try to do good, I learn. And then in 1990, I got the gift from heaven for the largest project that I had led in my life, and it came by providence. And I tell you the story. I was in Washington, I ran agriculture of the World Bank policies, I put around me some of the best people in the world, I faced the White House, I was in a good shape. And I had dinner with a friend of mine, Danny Rubinstein, say, Avishay, you are divorced, you have to come back home, you should get married, etc. I said, I should, of course. And he said, I was offered to be professor in most universities, but I didn't want that, I wanted something else. So he said, why don't you be a president of university? I said, I would love that, but I'm 41. The people in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, the Naomi Kultura, you know them well, they won't take me. So what about Ben-Gurion? I said, well, you know, somebody was here 2 weeks ago. I interviewed him for a job. He was from Ben-Gurion, but he didn't qualify. But I'm divorced, he's divorced. I invited him home. And he told me the university is bankrupt, there's nothing there, and they're looking for president. I said, put my name. Who study mathematics and probability here? Some dude, no? Events ex ante with probability 0. What is the probability ex post? Event ex ante that are probability 0. What is the probability ex post? 0 or 1. Either they happen or they do not happen. It happened. And then there is the test. So first is the luck. For some reason it happened. And then is the second test, perseverance. I go there and I say, I have the vision was clear to me. 20,000 students, Park High Tech like Alma Mater, Stanford, but different from Palo Alto. There is a bridge in Palo Alto at my time between East Palo Alto, the blacks, and the rest, still is. I say, I'm going to open the university to all the disadvantaged communities, Jews and Bedouin alike. I got, in May 1990, when I was elected, believe me, I'm a good speaker. Everybody hugged me. I say, finally, God, I got the point I want in my life. And then I got the biggest hammer in my life. The government didn't give me a penny. The donors stayed away. And then some people tried to depose me 3 months after I come. And I look at God, I say, God, what is this story about? And I was about to resign. And I called a friend of mine. I didn't tell that many people. Joseph Weinstein, he died from cancer years ago. And I called him, see, I made the mistake of my life. I had office facing the White House. I was running the world. What the hell here? I know what should happen, but I have no one archimedical point to lift it. And he asked me this question, which I want you to remember. So, Avishay, what is the difference between mice and men? Between birds and men, sorry. What is the difference between birds, birds, fly. What is the difference between birds and men? I say, birds know to fly. He asked me, why? You know better than me. I say, because of aerodynamic force of some sort. He say, no. They have more self-confidence. You do what you do, and God will take care of you. I beat the bullet. I went the first time in my life to Palm Beach. All of a sudden, the gates of heaven open, start people coming in. I got people, and things work out. But there was another element for the success. There is no individual success. The narcissists that do individual success eventually destroy everything around them, if not now, then later. It's only team success. And when I am at the beginning, and mind you, I'm in university, not everybody in university is the greatest or everything. University are also hierarchical with a problem. You know, it's not simple. And I wanted to build in to get the young people to move up. And some of the professors that were there were not the greatest. I put around me a team of people. There was maybe the top Nobel laureate in chemistry for many years, the president of the Royal Society, Aaron Klug. There were a couple of people with money and scientists that this advisory committee, when we wanted to create things, there will come some of average faculty, they come with money and will be able to push things up. So in a way I was fortunate, as I said before, to be able to obtain people that together we have the same passion, we supported each other, and then the obstacles you surpass. In this story, Beersheba today, I shared with Ernie and Dinara before, it's become people of Cyber City, but Cyber City, it may not be exactly. There was a high-tech park built. I can tell you stories. It's booming now. But there's one thing that is missing there. In the Q&A answer, if you want to ask me a question, because Ernie is the biggest gift for Georgia Tech, I'll tell you how God brought the largest gift to Israel, people that I met that gave $400 million, that is unbelievable. And it's a nice story, but that's in the Q&A, if you want to ask the question, because it's a nice story. Because life is stories, and the moral of the story. But for me, today, that Beersheba is prosperous, and the army is moving down, and things work well, for me, there is one thing there that is wrong and incomplete. If some of you remember the Bible, Beersheba is the city of Abraham. Abraham had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Around Beersheba, we have the sons of Ishmael, the Bedouins. The Bedouins are nomad. They grew very much in population, and they're not part of the game. When I became president, I opened the University of the Bedouins from 30 students. Today there are about 700, mostly women. I went to the Sheikh, many professors, 7, 10. But unemployment is still 60%. Illiteracy is low. And the project I'm involved today is with the most exciting people that for me, they are symbol for what it is to be a leader. And they are Bedouins. Because we are 10 people together, several Bedouins, several Jews, that we committed to have a major transformation by creating an investment fund out of the book to create industries that are different in the same rule that I told you. Think out of the box. Bedouin leads it. We are committed to each other, and it will happen. I'll give you but one example of a leader that I admire. He's 46. His name is Dr. Muhammad El-Nabari. He grew up in an undeclared village without electricity, without water. He was going a couple of miles on a donkey to study. He has tremendous IQ. He can be top guy in Georgia Tech, I tell you. And he got a degree in chemistry at IDB University and PhD for Ben-Gurion, and he was about to go to Australia. I sent a recommendation letter for him. His wife said, no, you stay here. He went for a chemical company, did many patents for them. And then few friends say, why don't you be mayor of our own small town? He's from small tribe, not much power. What he did in these 14 years, I never saw any mayor of Israel, Jew or non-Jew, that did. He have high IQ, he have EQ, that many people don't have. EQ, which is not about me. He lives in blood revenge, and some of the Israelis that are not enlightened at work, and he's always positive, like Ernie Scheller, he's always positive. So for me, together with some Bedouin businessmen and Jews, we are now going to do transformation because I say, it's true for all the Holy Land. There is no future for the children of Isaac without the children of Ishmael. And it has to be through economics and justice and bondship for the new world that we are all one. We are all one. The question is, can the agents, and you should be there, of hope and some wisdom, defeat the agents of fear and hatred? Because it's so easy today in the world to play one against each other, and we are one. So if I sum up what I told you, I'm a lucky man. Some of you will be lucky, some of you already lucky to be here. When you go, and some of you will be captain of industry, and some of you will lead social project, and maybe some of you will be a good politician. You remember that life is not about me and me and me. And I tell you what I learned from my mentor, the greatest Nobel economist, Kenneth Arrow, that died last month. Before his Nobel lecture, he was 51 when he got the Nobel, the youngest Nobel laureate in economics ever to receive it. He said the 3 principles, which I abide also in my life, for what is the meaning to do good in economics, is following the 3 principles of the great Rabbi Hillel that live around the same time of Jesus, and they say the same things about love your neighbor as much as yourself. And the 3 principles are, and I say it in Hebrew, and then I translate it to English. אם אני לי מי לי, וכשאני לעצמי מה אני, ואם לא עכשיו ומתי. If I am not for myself, who am I? In every difficult situation, still rely on yourself. In the worst situation. Be entrepreneur, don't give up. Believe in yourself. You can create yourself. But the second one, if I'm only for myself, who am I? If there is no family, there are no people, no country, no planet, it's me and me and me, and after me the flood, we're going to destroy everything. And the third rule, if not now, then when? If not now, then when? Every day, the world is starting afresh. You know, we're living in a chaotic world, and you know from chaos theory, one little thing here can get typhoon some other place. Every day, the world starts afresh. And it's you, and the people that I see in Berkeley, and people that I meet quietly, not in universities, that you are the agent of transformation. Because what we live in you is a very troubled world. And we don't give you a recipe the way we grew up. But you're going to ride this horse of technology. And you don't let the agents of fear and hatred dominate you. And in that you'll be able to create a new world. God bless you, and thank you very much. Any questions? I'm available to you. You know, it's a conversation, I tell you. Ask anything you want. If I don't want to answer, I'll take the 5th.
Dr. Braverman, I have a question first, if I could, which
Would
is...
anybody just introduce himself or herself a little bit, that I know who I'm conversing with?
I'm Gregory Marr. I'm a professor here at the business school. And Theresa May wrote Article 50 to remove the UK from the European Union today. And I just wanted to ask, because of course you're an economist and an accomplished one, your thoughts on the prospects for the UK for the future. Is that a good idea to leave the European Union, or ultimately will that be problematic for them?
You know, I'll broaden the question just briefly, because I'll not say it may be good, it may be bad. I want just to give you my perception, because in the past I supported certain things that now I think they are differently, about Europe. You see, after the horrors of 14 to 45, there was this concept, starting with the French, with Jean Monnet, etc., to build a common market and have in a way a sense of Europe that will eliminate this constant war and aggression, to some extent, except for the Balkan, it was successful. Also the realization that in economics, there is America and there is emerging China. If the Europe is not one block, Europe, that doesn't make many children, will disappear as power anyhow. I brought to Ben-Gurion University and honored both François Mitterrand and Helmut Kohl, the two people that were the architects of this new Europe, and I had conversation with them. And I admit that I also, at the time when I was very excited about the ideas, I supported all the moves there, and today I'll tell you about my singing expos, but that's Monday morning quarterback, you know, that's can't that much, doesn't take care. Of course you need Europe to be together, because otherwise it's finished, it's not a power. You know, you need 2.2 children to maintain the population. You know, my Catholic friends in Barcelona are joking, they have 1.3 children per woman, that the Catholic women are praying to the Pope and swallowing the pill, you know. So basically, why? Of course you have to have migration if you don't have, you don't make children, okay? Now, European Union should be done, the mistake that was, and I was part of the people that supported that, was the monetary union. And I'll give just but one example, and I'll move to the second question because I don't want to give lectures. Lecture in economics I give separately in other time. You see, America went to civil war. Almost 1 million people had been killed because it was about to be divided. Because it was not divided, America has a Federal Reserve Bank, which when you push the button, the money flows. Europe doesn't have that. Europe have the ERBD, and they have to ask Angela when they can push it or not. It's not a federal bank. Second, New York can subsidize Mississippi vis-a-vis that federal tax system because you have political union. In Europe, there is no political union. So when the Germans was about, and Angela Merkel wanted to subsidize the Greeks, the local population said, we don't want that. They forget that they enjoy the Marshall Plan. They forget that from the euro they benefit, because in politics, the population is not Europe, it's your own constituency. Therefore, today, Europe doesn't function. I'm very much worried about the process that takes place, and I already said, and I visited many times Brussels. I was chairman of the Israeli parliament to discussion with the... This European parliament is a joke. I don't know if they record me, you know why the restaurants in Brussels are the best in the world? Because there's so much money flow for all this bureaucracy, and I'm telling the truth. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So therefore there is a dilemma, but you have to remain. Because if Europe does not remain, and Europe is the bastion of liberal democracy, it will be under the boot, you know, the summer looks from the east. And that I'll end this conversation because I didn't want to go more for politics. And Britain have one dilemma, that I am a vivid reader. And I enjoy their foreign secretary book about Winston Churchill. But as I say, for me, leaders are people that are modest. And when you have narcissists that's playing all the game, I'm worried. So what happened to England, I don't know, maybe it will be okay. So I don't give you an answer, but there is a dilemma today of the public institutions that don't function. At the same time, we have to be united, and that's another conversation. Thank you.
We have a question.
If you ask me about the 400 million, I'll end with that. That's it, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For coming. My name is John Ruggiero. I'm a grad student in mechanical engineering, but my question to you, you spoke about how politics is broken a lot of times, and really you see the change coming from individuals and from large corporations. Do you see a danger in that, in the fact that these corporations won't necessarily represent the broader interests, and a lot of times they represent their own interests, and so there is sometimes some backlash that they're trying to make these social changes that might not be the actual interests of the people, and maybe that's for better, but maybe that's for worse as well.
You're absolutely right in this question, because the question today, since politics is so dysfunctional short term, we can define. I'll just put it aside, when I grew up, I was admirer of Plato, you know, Platon, of Maimonides, the Jewish scholar. I believed that there is certain meritocracy of people that evolve intellectually and emotionally, and they should be the leaders. I didn't believe in just the common wisdom that you can manipulate and do everything. The question is, as you say rightly, if the corporations are doing only for their narcissism, for their own profit, if they don't have the value that you and me want to share, to take care of the workers, to take care of the environment, to feel that we want community because they have so much power, they will fail. And that's part of the game that have to be played in corporation when you will be there. It's part of the debate that takes place now all over the place. I just said the power is there. If it's abused often. But your role and our role is to repair it. In politics, I pray. I will send to Dean Mariam Alavi. I honored Nelson Mandela, and in 1998 we spent several hours that I interviewed him. He had influence on me, and I'll send you this interview. I think the likelihood of these people to emerge in politics, given the selection process today, is very small. So I don't reject that things will come. But this guy was 27 years in jail. He learned all kinds of things. He enrolled things. There was something about transformation that took place together with the clerk. What you have today in politics, the need for constant appearance and bullshit and everything and making conflict all the time, doesn't bring the shellers, doesn't bring the people that are thoughtful, that doesn't bring people that think how to build a team, statistically speaking. You don't have to give up. But for me, I played this game. I realized in this game, I did the best I can. People of my kind cannot be today in leadership. So I moved to other arena where I think you can make more of a difference. But each of you will make his choice. Because we need honest politicians. We need people that are humble politicians. We need people like that. But I'm talking about your students. Incentives. You have to appear all day, every morning on TV. And you are intelligent. To make a decision in a complicated world, you have to sit with a team. You cannot do just Twitter all the time. You have to sit and listen and work together. So we have a dilemma, and I'm talking, it's not to do with America, it's to do in Europe, it's to do every place. It's the technology that changed that. The fact that it's constant battle. So to answer you, I just look at the emphasis of economic power is shifting, and also to the individual that can do light net instead of the power of the dark net. And if you allow me, I'll say one word about Mark Zuckerberg. Because Mark Zuckerberg sent, a couple of weeks ago, a major address to his 2 billion followers on Facebook. And there was a rebuttal in the Financial Times by our young history philosopher, Yuval Noah Harari, and I want just to put to your attention. Because what Mark Zuckerberg is saying, the answer to the world today, to create this light net that I defined, that we connect through the internet, and from that, we're going to bring the new good world that we all want to do, except that it's online. When you have people, and I know it's with you as well, with my sons, that becoming all the time online, all life is online, there's no offline. When you look at your wife, when you look at the nature, when you hug somebody, it should be a rule. Online 2 hours, 10 hours, we are human beings. And I'll tell you something else. Anthropologists already discovered, probably there is also anthropology in Georgia Tech, that the largest group that people can really relate is 150 people. You know, so all these millions of people, they're not really your friends. Except you can do something like that. But the problem of getting in touch through prayer, through meditation, through interaction needs offline. And if everybody online, the robots will be there in no time. So therefore, there is something in between the fact that we can connect through the internet and the fact that we are totally disconnected through the internet. And this line, you have to guide it. Because you have to have certain prohibition when you teach your children that they will be also offline. Because God forbid, if people will be 20 hours online, will be robots already next year. My last question, I'll ask the 400 million and then I close. Miracles that happen. In life, you can do certain things, and then God provides sometimes, sometimes not. And I tell you this miracle because it's a nice story, how Ben-Gurion University got $400 million gift. There was somebody in LA for the work for the university that met a couple. The boss passed away, Howard and Lottie Marcus, and they were interested in water. I met them, we built a water institute, and they gave $3 million gift in a will, $200,000 in cash. And I like people. I used to meet with them, incredible people. And one day, I'm in Beersheba, Mr. Sharon was prime minister at the time, I get a phone call. And this guy, Howard Marcus, called me and said, we decided to give everything to the university. You know, I was grown up a little bit, so I didn't ask how much. I said, okay, thank you. So you didn't ask me how much? I didn't. He says, $225 million, but there's one condition. I said, what's the condition? That the money is remaining in certain agreement until both of us died 6 months after we die, and it invested only in the way that we want. I say, okay, it's your money, of course, why not? Now I'll tell you the story about these two people, which tell you the act of God and how things work, and you know. Howard Marcus was born September 15, 1909. He died 2 years ago, so at the age 104 and a half. Totally sane, totally together. He grew up in Germany. He became dentist in Heidelberg. In 1933, he fled to Italy under Mussolini. In 1939, though, at the last minute, he came to New York, became a dentist in New York. His wife-to-be, Lottie Marcus, left Berlin in 1934, and she became secretary in Wall Street. Later in the 40s, they fell in love, but there was one more gentleman that the student of finance know them all. There was a guy called Benjamin Graham. Some of you that should read the history of finance, Ben Graham is considered probably the greatest guru on Wall Street. His book, The Intelligent Investor, is one of the best ever written. And he was a professor in Columbia, and he liked Lottie, but she wanted Harvard. So he was already divorced twice, a little playboy, so she wanted Harvard, but they became friends. And then somebody that you know his name, a young guy from Oklahoma, from Nebraska, his name is Warren Buffett. You probably heard about this guy. He heard about Ben Graham, and he said, I want to be like some of you want to be assistant of Miriam or this. I want to be your assistant. So he took him, he read something interesting. Warren Buffett worked for several years, and then, like you, one day you get up in the morning and say, I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to work for somebody. I want to be my way. He said, I'm going to create my own investment fund. He needed money. So he went to Lottie because she knows there, and she likes the young boy, and they gave him money, $1,000 every year. This money was staying in Sukhoi, I think it started, then Berkshire Hathaway, and grew and grew and grew. All this money was given to the daughters, they gave to Ben-Gurion University. I wrote to Warren Buffett when they gave it to me, and he say, I thank them, it's good for Ben-Gurion University, but now I cannot come. Later he did some business with some place in Israel. Now, these people were totally modest, like Ernie. Nothing. Simplicity. When I brought them to Ben-Gurion University and they would declare the gift, there was a ceremony. And now I'll tell you one joke that Howard get up, was Mr. Peres next to me, was the minister at the time. And he said, I want to apologize to you all. When I was young, I was slightly anti-Semitic. And since this gift, I decided to be only for research, not for any building or anything to be paid on. The faculty come, because usually faculty doesn't come to ceremonies when the buildings, they don't come that much. You know. The deans have to call them, but they don't come. If there's money, they come. And he said, I was slightly anti-Semitic. So everybody thought it's a Nazi that converted and now is repaying his sins. And he said, I was the best pupil in my class in a small town in Germany. But then 2 other Jewish families came in. They have 2 boys in my class, and they become third in my class, and that's why I became slightly anti-Semitic. In any case, they were modest people. The wife, Lottie, died in December 2016. I talked to her on the video a day before she died. She was totally together. She knew poetry, they've been that gentle, and it was a miracle for God. And you know, it's yours, it's not yours. There is a game of life that played that we have a choice. Do we just go for our ego and be successful in the wrong way, or we surrender? Sometimes when we surrender, miracles happen. And you can perform these miracles. Thank you very much, and God bless you.